The sound of high heels echoed through the empty hallway of Westbridge Academy, each click precise and measured against the polished marble floor. Riley Donovan, 28 years old, with her brown hair pulled back in a perfect bun, carried herself with the nervous energy of a substitute teacher on her first day. She clutched a worn leather briefcase against her navy blazer, her modest dress suggesting someone who'd spent her last paycheck on looking professional enough for Connecticut's most exclusive private school. The morning sun streaming through tall windows caught the slight tremor in her hands as she reached for the door handle of room 12A. Inside, 17 students lounged in their $80,000 per year seats, most scrolling through phones that cost more than Riley's monthly rent. Preston Whitmore III sprawled in the back row, his lacrosse captain jacket draped over his chair like a king's cape, legs stretched into the aisle with calculated casualness. His ice-blue eyes tracked Riley as she walked toward the front of the classroom, noting her sensible flats, the way she kept her head down, avoiding eye contact. Perfect prey. As she passed his desk, Preston's foot shot out with practiced precision, catching her ankle mid-stride. The briefcase flew from her hands as Riley pitched forward, her knee striking the floor with a sickening crack that echoed through the suddenly silent room. Papers scattered like snow across the hardwood. Her carefully organized lesson plans mixing with attendance sheets in chaotic disarray. The class erupted in laughter, phones instantly raised to capture the humiliation. Before we dive deeper into what happened next at Westbridge Academy, if you've ever witnessed or experienced bullying that crossed the line, you know that moment when everything changes in an instant. Hit that subscribe button if you believe every bully eventually meets their match, and stick around, because what Preston Whitmore didn't know about his new substitute teacher would destroy his entire world in less than 2 weeks. Trust me, you've never seen karma work quite like this. "Oops," Preston drawled, not even bothering to move his designer sneaker from the aisle. "Sorry, miss. These legs are just too long for these tiny desks. Maybe you should watch where you're walking." Bryce Hamilton captured every second on his latest iPhone, zooming in on Riley's face as she slowly pushed herself up from the floor. Nathan Cross, Preston's fellow athlete and enforcer, snickered from his seat by the window, already typing something on his laptop. But something strange happened as Riley stood. Instead of tears, instead of the flustered embarrassment they'd seen from every other substitute teacher Preston had targeted, she simply smoothed down her skirt with steady hands, dabbing at the small tear in her stockings with clinical detachment. A thin line of blood seeped through where her knee had hit the floor, but she didn't wince. She bent down to gather her papers, and when she straightened, her lips curved into the faintest smile that made Preston shift uncomfortably in his seat. "Perfect evidence, Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice carrying a strange note of satisfaction. "Thank you for that." The laughter died instantly. Preston leaned forward, confusion flickering across his conventionally handsome features. "Evidence of what? That you're clumsy?" Riley walked to the board with perfect posture, despite the visible limp, picked up a marker, and wrote in elegant script, "Lesson 1. Every action has consequences." She turned back to face the class, her brown eyes sweeping across each student with an intensity that made several of them lower their phones. "Especially," she added, glancing meaningfully at the corner of the ceiling where everyone knew the security cameras had been broken for months, "when it's caught on camera." Preston followed her gaze and laughed. "There's no camera there, lady. It's been dead since last semester." Riley's smile widened just a fraction. "Is that so? How convenient for someone who makes a habit of this behavior." She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out what looked like an ordinary smartphone, though Preston noticed the unusual dual-screen design and the tiny 360-degree camera lens on its edge. Fortunately, modern devices don't rely on school infrastructure. The phone's secondary screen lit up with text that made Preston's blood run cold. Assault recorded, legal chain of custody established, Connecticut Statute 53-181 documented. Riley set the device on her desk with deliberate care. Now then, shall we discuss today's lesson on cause and effect? Or would you prefer I forward this timeline-verified, blockchain-authenticated evidence to the appropriate authorities? You see, Mr. Whitmore, contemporary legal technology ensures that every frame, every timestamp, every action is preserved in a way that's completely inadmissible in court. The encryption alone makes it impossible to claim editing or manipulation. She tapped the screen gently. This particular model is used by federal investigators for exactly that reason. Preston's face had gone from amused to pale in the span of 30 seconds. You can't. That's not. He pulled out his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. Within moments, Amber Fitzgerald, the student council president and social media queen of Westbridge, had already posted about the incident. #ClumsyTeacher is trending, she announced from her seat, manicured nails clicking against her MacBook. Already got 300 views. But Riley seemed pleased rather than disturbed by this development, pulling up the post on the classroom's smartboard. Excellent, Miss Fitzgerald. You've just created corroborating evidence of witness testimonies. Please, continue documenting. It will make the prosecutor's job so much easier. The classroom door opened and Coach Williams strode in. Preston's uncle stood 6'4", his massive frame filling the doorway. His Westbridge Academy coaching jacket stretched tight across shoulders, built from decades of intimidation disguised as athletic training. Miss Donovan, he said, his voice a low rumble. Principal Morrison asked me to check if you needed any assistance. Heard you had a little accident. He moved closer, towering over Riley's 5'5" frame. Accidents happen all the time in schools, especially to substitutes who don't understand how things work here. Sometimes they trip. Sometimes they fall downstairs. Sometimes their cars get vandalized in the parking lot. Tragic, really, how accident-prone some teachers can be. Riley didn't step back. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. Coach Williams, are you threatening a federal witness? The words landed like a bomb in the silent classroom. Coach Williams blinked, his intimidating facade cracking. Federal? What are you talking about? Riley pulled a slim leather folder from her briefcase, flipping it open just enough for the coach to see the gold badge inside before closing it again. We'll discuss that later. For now, please leave my classroom. You're disrupting a federal investigation. The coach's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He looked at Preston, who had gone completely white, then back at Riley. This is ridiculous. You can't be. I can be, and I am, Riley interrupted smoothly. Now, you have two choices. Leave voluntarily, or I make a call that will have FBI agents here in 15 minutes to escort you out in handcuffs. Your choice, Coach. The man backed toward the door, nearly stumbling over a desk in his haste. This isn't over, he muttered, but the threat sounded hollow now, desperate. No, Riley agreed, it's just beginning. After Williams left, the classroom remained frozen in stunned silence. Preston's fingers trembled as he typed message after message on his phone. Riley watched him with that same unsettling calm, occasionally glancing at her own device and screenshotting something with small sounds of satisfaction. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to share what you're texting your father? Perhaps the part where you claim I'm threatening you, or the response where he promises to have me fired by lunch." Preston's head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. "How did you—" Riley smiled. "The same way I know about the $50,000 your father transferred to Judge Harrison's campaign last October 3rd. The same property he gifted to Judge Blake's wife on September 15th. The interesting meetings at the Riverside Country Club, where envelopes change hands under table linens worth more than most people's cars." She pulled up a complex financial chart on her laptop, the image projecting onto the smart board. The class gasped collectively as they recognized names, companies, connections spreading like a spiderweb across Connecticut's most powerful families. "This is fascinating data from modern litigation support systems," Riley explained conversationally. "Every transaction, every shell company, every offshore account leaves digital fingerprints. Financial forensics has become quite sophisticated. For instance, Mr. Whitmore, did you know your father's company has made 17 suspicious transfers totaling over $50 million in the past 3 years? All to accounts in the Cayman Islands, all structured just below reporting requirements?" Preston stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're lying! You don't know anything about my family." Riley pulled up another screen. "Whitmore Corporation, founded 1992. Current valuation, $3.2 billion. Primary holdings in commercial real estate, with a particularly interesting portfolio of buildings that seem to generate income far exceeding their rental capacity. Almost as if they're being used to launder money from other sources." Her fingers danced across the keyboard. "Your father has dinner with Senator Blake every third Thursday. Your mother serves on 6 charity boards, all of which receive generous donations from companies that later win municipal contracts. Your sister Madison, currently at Yale, had her admission guaranteed by a $2 million donation despite her SAT scores being, well, let's call them unimpressive." "Stop!" Preston's voice cracked. "Just stop! What do you want?" Riley stood, walking slowly toward his desk, her limp barely noticeable now. "What I want, Preston, is justice. 2 years ago, your father destroyed someone I cared about. Marcus Chen. Does that name ring a bell?" Preston's confused expression seemed genuine. "He was a forensic accountant who discovered your father's money laundering operation. When he tried to report it, evidence mysteriously appeared in his car. Cocaine, enough to send him to federal prison for 10 years. He died there 6 months later, stabbed by an inmate who received a rather large deposit to his commissary account the next day." The room was so quiet that the sound of someone swallowing was audible. "Marcus was my mentor," Riley continued. "He taught me everything about following money trails, about understanding how the wealthy hide their crimes behind lawyers and donations and political connections. So I made a choice. I joined the FBI. I specialized in financial crimes, and I spent the last 18 months building a case against your father that would be absolutely bulletproof." She returned to her desk, pulling out a thick folder. "Then I learned about you, Preston. Your little kingdom here at Westbridge. The students you've terrorized. The teachers you've driven away. The girl who attempted suicide last year after you spread those photos of her. Oh yes, I know about Jessica Vale. She's prepared to testify, by the way." Preston slumped into his seat, his phone clattering to the floor. Around him, his classmates were slowly recognizing the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just about a substitute teacher being tripped. This was about an empire beginning to crumble. And it had all started with Preston's arrogant decision to stick out his foot. Nathan Cross quietly closed his laptop and inched his desk away from Preston's. Bryce Hamilton had stopped recording, his face pale, as he realized he might be implicated in whatever was about to unfold. Even Amber Fitzgerald had gone silent, her social media posts forgotten as she stared at the financial web still displayed on the board, recognizing her own father's company among the connected entities. The next morning arrived with deceptive normalcy at Westbridge Academy, but Preston Whitmore knew everything had changed. He'd barely slept, spending the night watching his father make increasingly frantic phone calls to lawyers, politicians, anyone who might help contain the damage. But Riley Donovan had been thorough. When Preston entered the classroom carrying 2 cups of coffee, students who'd usually greet him with deference now avoided eye contact. He approached Riley's desk where she sat grading papers as if nothing had happened. Without warning, he tilted the cup, sending scalding coffee cascading over her shoulder and down her white blouse. The liquid soaked through immediately, leaving angry red marks visible on her skin. Several students gasped, phones immediately recording the scene. Riley stood slowly, coffee dripping onto the floor, her expression unchanged, except for the slightest tightening around her eyes. She didn't scream, didn't rush to clean herself. Instead, she calmly pulled out her specialized phone and began documenting the burns appearing on her shoulder and arm. "Second assault," she said quietly, her voice carrying throughout the silent room. "Pattern of escalation established. Premeditated attack with intent to cause bodily harm." She looked directly at Preston. "That's assault with a dangerous weapon under Connecticut law. You just graduated from misdemeanor to felony." Preston's hands shook as he backed away. It was an accident. Everyone saw it was an accident. But the other students remained silent, their loyalty to Preston crumbling under the weight of potential federal investigation. Riley pulled a fresh blouse from her briefcase, something that struck several students as odd. Why would a substitute teacher bring a change of clothes unless she expected something like this? "Miss Fitzgerald," Riley addressed Amber while dabbing at the coffee stains, "I noticed you've been investigating my background. Have you found anything interesting?" Amber shifted nervously in her seat. "There's nothing. No social media, no previous school records, no digital footprint at all. It's like you didn't exist before last week." Riley smiled, very observant. "That's because Riley Donovan is not my real name. It's an operational identity created specifically for this assignment." She reached into her briefcase again, this time pulling out her federal badge and holding it up for the entire class to see. "Special Agent Riley Donovan, FBI Financial Crimes Division. I've been undercover at Westbridge for exactly 6 days, though our investigation of the Whitmore family has been ongoing for 18 months. The silence that followed was absolute. Preston's legs gave out, and he collapsed into the nearest chair. Around the room, students were processing the implications. They'd been part of an FBI investigation without knowing it. Every text, every social media post, every witnessed incident was potential evidence. Riley continued, her voice taking on an official tone. "Mr. Whitmore, your assaults on my person have provided probable cause for immediate execution of search warrants. Your father's offices, your home, and 17 other locations connected to Whitmore Corporation will be raided simultaneously in approximately," she checked her watch, 12 minutes. As if on cue, the distant sound of helicopters became audible. Through the classroom windows, black SUVs could be seen entering the school parking lot. Preston's phone exploded with messages, his father's name flashing repeatedly on the screen. He answered with trembling fingers, putting it on speaker without thinking. "Preston, get out of there now! The FBI is—" Richard Whitmore's voice cut off as another voice came on the line. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Agent Martinez. Please step away from your computer and keep your hands visible. We have a warrant for your arrest." The line went dead. Preston stared at the phone as if it were a foreign object, then looked up at Riley with tears streaming down his face. "Please," he whispered. "Please. I'm only 17. This will ruin my whole life." Riley knelt beside his desk, her voice gentle but firm. "Your whole life? Jessica Vale attempted suicide because of what you did to her. Kevin Park spent 3 months in physical therapy after you pushed him down the stairs and claimed it was an accident. Maria Santos's family nearly got deported after you reported them to ICE with false claims, all because she rejected your advances. Their lives were ruined. You're just facing consequences." The classroom door opened and Principal Morrison entered, followed by 3 FBI agents in tactical gear. The principal's usual composed demeanor had crumbled entirely. His expensive suit was disheveled, his face flushed with panic. "Agent Donovan, surely we can discuss this reasonably. The school has cooperated fully." Riley cut him off. "The school has cooperated in covering up 17 reported incidents of assault, 3 cases of sexual harassment, and systematic targeting of scholarship students. You personally accepted $600,000 in donations from the Whitmore family in exchange for burying complaints. That's conspiracy and bribery, Principal Morrison." She turned to one of the agents. "Agent Kim, please process the principal first. We have his confession on tape from yesterday's conversation." Morrison's face went white. "What confession?" "I didn't—" Riley held up her phone, playing back Morrison's voice from the previous afternoon. "Look, Miss Donovan, the Whitmore family essentially funds this school. If Preston wants to have a little fun with substitute teachers, we look the other way. That's how things work here. You can accept it or find another job." The agent stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. "Principal Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault, bribery, and violation of mandatory reporting laws." As Morrison was led away, Preston watched in growing horror. His protected world was collapsing in real time. Through the window, he could see news vans arriving, reporters setting up cameras. His father's arrest would be the leading story on every channel by noon. Riley's laptop pinged with an incoming video call. She accepted it, and the screen filled with the image of a federal courtroom. "Agent Donovan," the judge addressed her, "we've reviewed your evidence. Arrest warrants have been approved for 43 individuals connected to the Whitmore money laundering operation. Assets are being frozen as we speak." The judge's gaze shifted to someone off-screen. "Mr. Richard Whitmore, you are charged with money laundering, tax evasion, bribery of federal officials, conspiracy to commit murder, and 16 additional counts. Bail is denied due to flight risk." Preston saw his father on the screen, standing in handcuffs, looking older than his 52 years. Their eyes met through the video connection, and Richard Whitmore's expression crumbled. "I'm sorry, son," he said quietly, before being led away. The connection ended, leaving Preston staring at a black screen. Around him, his classmates were documenting everything, some live streaming, others typing furiously on their phones. The story was already viral. #WestBridgeScandal was trending nationally. Riley began packing her briefcase with the same calm efficiency she'd maintained throughout. "Classes are dismissed for today," she announced. "Federal investigators will be interviewing each of you about your experiences at Westbridge. I encourage complete honesty. Immunity agreements are available for those who cooperate fully." As students filed out, many stopping to thank her or share their own stories of Preston's bullying, Riley noticed Preston hadn't moved. He sat frozen, tears running down his face, his phone buzzing incessantly with messages he couldn't bring himself to read. "What happens to me?" he asked in a broken voice. Riley sat on the edge of his desk. "That depends on you. You're facing federal assault charges for attacking an FBI agent. The prosecutor might try you as an adult, given the severity and premeditation. You're looking at 3 to 5 years minimum, possibly more if other victims press charges. She paused, studying his devastated expression. Or you cooperate fully. Testify about your father's activities, the culture of corruption at Westbridge, the network of families involved. You might get juvenile detention, sealed records, a chance to start over. Preston nodded numbly. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. He looked up at her with red-rimmed eyes. Did you plan this? Getting me to assault you? Riley stood, adjusting her coffee-stained blazer. I planned to investigate your father. You made the choice to trip me, to escalate, to assault me with hot coffee. Every decision was yours, Preston. I just made sure there would be consequences. 6 weeks later, Preston stood in a federal courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit that replaced his designer clothes. His mother sat in the gallery, her perfect composure shattered. The family fortune was gone, seized by federal authorities. The Whitmore name, once synonymous with power and privilege, had become toxic. Former friends and allies distanced themselves, afraid of being caught in the investigation's expanding web. The judge looked down at Preston with stern eyes. Mr. Whitmore, you've pled guilty to 2 counts of assault on a federal agent. Given your cooperation and age, I'm sentencing you to 3 years in a juvenile facility, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. You'll also complete 1,000 hours of community service specifically working with bullying prevention programs. Preston nodded, unable to speak. As court officers led him away, he passed Riley, who sat in the prosecution section. She'd traded her substitute teacher clothes for a sharp FBI suit, her badge visible on her belt. Their eyes met for a moment, and Preston saw no triumph in her expression, only a sense of completion. Justice served, nothing more, nothing less. Outside the courthouse, Riley stood on the steps as reporters surrounded her. She answered their questions with professional precision, explaining how the investigation had uncovered not just the Whitmore family crimes, but a network of corruption extending through Connecticut's elite institutions. 17 more schools were now under investigation. Hundreds of millions in laundered money had been recovered. As the crowd dispersed, Riley's phone vibrated with an unknown text. You got the son and father. The grandfather is untouchable. The attached photo showed William Whitmore Sr. with 3 Supreme Court justices at a private gathering. The corruption went deeper than imagined. Another agent approached with a folder. Anderson Academy in Massachusetts. Similar patterns. Ready? Riley glanced at Preston's mother being led away, then opened the folder revealing another elite school harboring predators behind ivy walls. She thought of Marcus Chen, Jessica Vale, all the victims who fought alone. When do I start? Driving away from Westbridge, Riley whispered words that would haunt Preston throughout his incarceration. Westbridge was just the beginning. The hunt continues.